But ladies and gentlemen, we know that the most momentous moment is here, the chief guest address on taking the lead a step forward to an equitable nation. Well, let's get the stage set as well as we go ahead and lead you all into this very, very important innings and segment of the day. Well, ladies and gentlemen, our honorable chief guest, क्या कहें इनके बारे में? Winning by a margin of 4 lakh votes in the last elections, she has been the Member of Parliament twice, ladies and gentlemen, and she currently holds the prestigious position of the Cabinet Minister for Women and Child Development, Govt of India. She has spearheaded the Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao movement, empowering the girl child at the grassroots levels, and as a minister has launched several initiatives, from she-box to address the sexual harassment at workplace, to Sakhi mobile app to provide information and support to women affected by violence, to also introducing the very beautiful Maternity Benefit Amendment Act 2017 to extend the maternity leave period for working women from 12 weeks to 26 weeks. I'm sure we all know that this is a game changer for working women in India and also for the tech working women in India. Her vision, her passion, her intelligence, her candor, her vigor, and of course, her humor, ladies and gentlemen. Well, they say that a woman on a mission never needs a permission. I think we are proud and I'm sure we are privileged to be inviting just in a bit the women who truly represents the ethos of our incredible India. But right before that, please allow me to first up welcome our conversationalist for this conversation. Can we please invite first up Rahul Kamat, the editor B2B division, Worldwide Media from the Times of India Group, to please step forward. Rahul, can we have you on stage as we will be all stepping up to greet our honorable chief guest on the stage. And maybe you're such to know, ladies and gentlemen, Zordar Abhinandan, Zordar Talia, please give it up to welcome Honorable Srimati Smriti Zubin, Irani, Minister of Women and Child Development, Govt of India, with a beautiful, beautiful round of applause. बहुत-बहुत स्वागत है आपका, and as we greet her, may I please request Mr. Manoj Nair, the Senior Director, Conferences and Special Initiatives from ETH, to please come forward and present our little token of appreciation, acknowledgement to our honorable chief guest. हमारी तरफ से आपके लिए पुष्प उपहार, आपका यहाँ पर होना हमारे लिए अहम है and we must say हमें प्रेरणा देता है. Thank you very, very much. Thank you, Manoj, for doing the honors. And with a beautiful round of cheer, once again, let's welcome Honorable Srimati Smriti Zubin Irani. Rahul, on that note, handing it over to you.
Thank you so much. I'm so nervous.
Well, if you're Rahul, then you should be.
That's a good one. That's a good one. Shall we?
Please.
Smriti ji, when you took an oath in 2014, you were the youngest minister in Bollywood.
I still am.
Yeah, yes, still you are. I know that was.
I'm not going to make it easy for him. Yes.
And when you took again oath in 2009, you came to Delhi as, as a giant slayer, defeating Rahul Gandhi. So from 2014 till now, 9 years, you have had some expectations from yourself and from the government. Have those expectations been met, specifically on women empowerment?
I think you'd like to reposition the question because I'm in the government, and hence, if one is to judge expectations, one needs to judge on behalf of the people. But issue that needs reflection. When we define expectations from a political or administrative point of view, are we desirous of drawing out expectations on the basis of what we see but feel that cannot be achieved? At times, are we looking at our desire from a particular administration from the perspective of where we come from, our circumstances? Or do we have a more national point of view in a particular segment of society or a particular segment of our industry, and our expectations then are based on that? So given that there are 1 billion plus people, your government is well positioned to allocate resources that are generated from citizens. And then we look at every segment, not only of industry, but communities, given the diversity of our culture, given our geographical challenges and opportunities. We then reach desired expectations stage by stage. So though the question is very simple, what do you expect, how much do you deliver? One needs to understand the complexity not only of governance, but also the complexity of serving a nation with 16,000 dialects, 125 constitutionally recognized languages, and issues that have possibly not been dealt upon for decades.
So you talked about, 16,000 dialects, 125 languages which are constitutionally recognized. So now if the government want to empower the agency of women technologically, do we have that information in a native language?
Firstly, I think that when the Prime Minister spoke about Digital India in the year 2014, there were many who scoffed at him. And primarily because the ones who scoffed at him presumed that in a country where we have close to 6,22,000 villages, how would our rural communities adapt to technological transitions? I think that the pandemic has resolutely told not only anybody who negated the digital capacity of India, but also the global order, that Indians, irrespective of their disposition, urban or rural, have the capacity to adopt technology, have the capacity then to adapt that technology to their local and individual use, and they do so with alacrity. What you define whether technology is available in 16,000 dialects, one needs to recognize the fact that global technologies predominantly are available now only in English. And that is why I'm sure none of the nominees today represent a technology company serving a particular dialect or serving a particular language. I presume that it's also because most businesses look at volumes in terms of transactions and engagements. So when we define opportunity in terms of profit, opportunity in terms of investments, and a long-term strategy which complement our linguistic diversity from a technological perspective, I think then we give new opportunities for new companies to emerge. Most of them may not be of global scale, but they will be customized to the needs of community, where community responsive businesses, I think, can operate.
How do we imbibe that sort of, you can say, regionalistic languages into companies? Is there any provision
I
for the
believe that the
government?
new education policy, which I had the privilege of drafting, has the tenets of that very change that you speak of. Because if you want to service linguistic needs through technology, you need to ensure that that language survives. And for that language to survive, it has to be either a medium of communication or it has to be a medium of instruction. For that language to be serviced through technology, you will need technologists who understand the nuance of the language so that they can compute technology accordingly. And all of it then possibly generates from how you educate your young. So if your education is bereft of your linguistic diversity, then you are actually not creating the consumer that you may so desire in that linguistic opportunity. And that is why when the Prime Minister, after 3 decades, presented the new education policy to our country, one of the basics of that policy is that can we ensure that our foundational learning for our children is in their mother tongue. Now, if one saw it myopically only from the perspective of India, one would presume, acha, BJP hai, isliye they're saying ki mother tongue mein bolo. But there is scientific evidence today which can be procured from, let's say, nations like China, and other nations that enjoy linguistic diversity and do not necessarily impose English in foundational learning on their children and their communities. And one finds that when you learn mathematics, science in your foundational journey, in your mother tongue, the very foundational elements of those subjects are very strong in such a student. I think that when we look at that research, we find more cause for having more and more children in that subject flourish in their mother tongue. One of the challenges that happens is when that student who has studied, let's say, in a particular native tongue or mother tongue, tries to transition into an acclaimed institution and suddenly is jarred by the usage of a language and standards that they have never gotten themselves ready to confront. So while the conversation that we are possibly delving into is very simplistic, the challenge before us is not that simple. There are layers within layers, and I think that the solution begins with education in the mother tongue. I'm sure that people seated here today belong to diverse linguistic backgrounds, but many of you who have children will possibly do the fact, I know Gujarati or I know Punjabi, but my kids don't. But you knew Gujarati and you knew Punjabi and you knew Marathi because your mother or your parents were speaking to you in that language. You were interested in that language because if you had a need as a child, that need was fulfilled only when you spoke that language within your family system. And secondly, apart from the fact that you spoke that language and that need got fulfilled, you saw an elder in the family writing and reading in that language. So there will be generations which will say, I can speak it, I can understand it, but I can't write it, I can't read it. And the generation after that can't speak it. So for a language to survive, you have to apply that language. You have to either write it or read it. And that's technology.
So it is opposition.
Sorry, I almost sounded like a professor.
So hope opposition is not making you and cry about Hindi is the preferable language for because I believe they are from the elite class.
Those who know Hindi in the opposition, I have no idea what kind of noise they are making. But I think what is productive for a country which is poised to, let's say, create a plan for the next 25 years when we reach 100 years of celebrating our independence, can we be shackled down by somebody's political reservations against a particular process because for them it's an issue of vote bank? Or do we as a nation need to holistically see where we want to be 25 years from now? So I think that citizens today are extremely cognizant to distinguish between political chatter and cultural truths. And that is where our opportunities, our promises for the future lie.
Smriti, in an earlier session, I had a discussion with one of the techie, and we got this point of equal pay scale. When we talk about equitable nation, this demand is always there, the equal pay scale should be there. So what's your thought on it?
I think then either you or the techie did not know that equal pay for equal work is mandated already by law.
Are corporates implementing?
So are you telling me whether you are in ET implementing equal pay for equal work? Your employees can tell you. I see one lady who works for you who's nodding her head no. So there is a very old English adage, practice what you preach. So do I as minister get paid as much as a male minister? Absolutely. So my government has implemented equal pay for equal work. And it seems your company hasn't yet. Maybe you'd like to begin to know. I'm the kind of female that not in. Yes. I think it's extremely important that when we talk about such issues, one, we be aware of the law of the land. We be aware of our constitutional responsibility, not only in terms of compliance as a corporate, but we also be aware of the fact what stops you, let's presume, in the absence of that equitable decision within a legislative. from implementing them, that very humanitarian way of looking at your employee-employee relationship? What stops you?
I have no answer.
Happens to Rahul all the time, yes.
Take my case, man.
No. There isn't any case to take.
So in Davos, you expressed your concern over no female participation in the formal workforce of the country.
I didn't express my concern, somebody asked me about it. And I think you need to also look at how the International Labour Organization defines labour. For instance, when we talk about formalization of labour opportunities, why do we seek formalization of that opportunity? Possibly for three reasons. One, financial security for the future vis-à-vis pensions. Second, financial security vis-à-vis health insurance. Third, financial security vis-à-vis equal pay for equal work, which is legislated. In our country, equal pay for equal work is legislated now under the new labour codes. In our country, you have a program called Ayushman Bharat, which covers medical needs for 10 crore families. So if there are 4 people per family in a family size, that means 40 crore people are already covered under that medical insurance support for close to 1,300 diseases with support across all hospitals of the country. Now, the third aspect is that of pension. You have a pension scheme called Suraksha Bima Yojana, which is insurance, which for 1 rupee you get a 2 lakh rupee life cover. Then you have Atal Bima Jyoti Yojana, under which you have another pension scheme where you can put in 300 rupees and get another coverage or a pension. Then you have a Karma Yogi pension scheme as well. So your government has ensured that irrespective of your economic disposition, you have instruments in the financial services sector which are backed by government mandate, which you can actually have access to create a more equitable place of work. The interesting part, Rahul, is that when we talk about unorganized labor, look at our industry scope. Most of our conversations revolve around labor at construction sites, correct? Who owns those construction companies?
The corporates.
So do we already have the law and a method to fix it? Yes. What do we need? Intention. For instance, in the beginning of the introduction, the lady was kind enough to say that I work in a ministry that looks at the POSH Act. We know that there are companies today that do not have an internal complaints committee, or if they do have an internal complaints committee and a woman approaches it, that is a death knell for her career. For instance, the lady was kind enough to talk about 26 weeks of maternity leave. Now, everybody in this room, please tell me which one of your colleagues has taken that 26 weeks maternity leave. 1, 2, 3, 4. Colleague, not
I can
you.
see a man. The gentleman is. Okay.
So, if you look at the percentage spread, at least 10 to 15% only, which means an instrument for that service exists legally, but the implementation is still hesitant. Maybe on behalf of the female concerned, maybe on behalf of the organization that doesn't deny it, but doesn't promote it, or look very kindly upon women in their offices who may want to ask for it. So let's dial back before COVID. After pregnancy, if a woman said, I'll work from home, everybody literally gave her a mini farewell. The minute COVID came, suddenly men were working from home as well. So now work from home is an established way of work, of engagement within your corporate organization, and it's not denied as a tool for possibly bringing about any acrimony from a payment point of view, or does not deny you an opportunity to get promoted within your organization. Why? Because men also work from home. So I think that when we talk about equality and equity, one needs to have a clear distinction between the two. Equity is to recognize who in your organization does not come from the same circumstances as you, and then give support for that individual to reach the standard average of everybody else's circumstances. And we tend to somehow confuse equity and equality. Equality is giving everybody an equal opportunity. But somebody who's running the race 100 meters behind you, if you give them an equal opportunity, does that really help give you a 100% solution? So I think that the best part about our nation state today is that we are having this conversation as to where to leverage equality, where to leverage equity. But my issue as a woman is that why is the woman's agency only a women's agenda? I'm grateful when you talk about expectations from this government. I have a male prime minister leading the female agenda. Because of the 2014 election, he had a decisive majority. What does he do in the first Independence Day speech from the ramparts of the Red Fort? He says, let's build toilets for women, which is not a politically glamorous issue. But he says it with no election on the horizon. He says it when there is absolutely no electoral manifesto promise. He says it from 3-4 promises. He says we talk about dignity of women all the time. But what is that challenge a poor woman begins with? Defecating in the open, finding that time when sunset happens so that she can find some corner. Till that woman does not get help, can we truly talk about equality? Now, is it the first Prime Minister we've had? We've had a female Prime Minister before. So that's what I'm saying. Why does a woman's agency have to be a woman's agenda alone? Now, he says, let's build toilets, and suddenly 11 million, 110 million toilets get built. He says, let's do it for women, but who ends up getting the advantage? The family does. She is a part of, let's say, a 3-member unit. Again, 11 crore families means 33 crore people never had a toilet to go to. And it was never a conversation in our country. And that is why I dial back to your first question. What are your expectations? Which Indian ever expected a Prime Minister to say, let's build toilets? And no Indian woman went up to a Prime Minister ever to say, I need toilets. Another issue which I think is extremely important. This is the first Prime Minister in the history of our country who's given us a menstrual hygiene administrative protocol. It's never happened before. For a man to do it. But what has never happened before is a Prime Minister going to the ramparts of the Red Fort and telling women of this country, you have Jan Aushadhi Kendra where you can get a sanitary pad for $1. Now you may see it as just one sentence by the Prime Minister of India. How many men can talk about it openly before that? On the street corner. How many men would give a speech on it? And here you had the Prime Minister of India talking about it, which meant that these issues are no longer taboo. The Prime Minister is in a position to say, I need to service the needs of the poorest of the poor, and this is what poor women need, let's get it done. But is it only a women's issue? So dial back again further to 2012, there's a World Bank report which says lack of sanitation in India costs us 6% of our GDP. It costs us opportunities in terms of infrastructure investment, tourism, MNCs wanting to not come to a country where people want to openly defecate. But in 2013, there's a report that says women who defecate, of all the sexual assault reports that come out, 44% of it happens to women who defecate in the open. Imagine that a woman has no option because she has no toilet, goes out to defecate and she gets raped or assaulted. When was that ever a conversation in our country? So when you talk about formalization of labor opportunities, how much of that opportunity is created so that families can afford toilets, approaches to hospital, insurance, pensions? So your government, on one hand, is providing that opportunity, on the other hand, is it's providing what that opportunity is supposed to provide. So that you can then, we are kick-starting a whole campaign, and you can get that equity that you talk about. That let's bring everybody to an equal circumstance, and then let everybody compete.
Recently, I've visited one of the manufacturing unit in Pune's other area, and in fact, ma'am, I was shocked to see there was no lady toilet. And I asked the management, why don't you have a female toilet for your manufacturing unit? They said, we don't have female employees. So I was wondering what has gone wrong. Is it awareness? Is government?
So how did you find that manufacturing unit?
That manufacturing unit.
Why were you shooting in that
We
manufacturing?
were shooting some inspiring stories, and we didn't find women that inspiring
So I'm
stories.
saying that whoever thought that they were good enough to be inspiring,
No.
whoever thought to check this aspect. Now you talk about the government. That means you're saying that an economy which is not a communist regime, you want the government to get into every company.
I'm not saying that. No, I'm not saying. I'm just giving an example. I'm not saying that. The government needs to,
Which means that somebody who did recce of that company should have never allowed you to go there. Somebody in your company who was researching should have said, Mr. Kamat, I believe you should not go here, because forget the fact that they don't have a female employee. They do not consider that a woman will walk into this manufacturing plant someday and might need a toilet.
which actually happened with my colleague. It actually happened with my colleague.
So the issue is that how many such companies do you do stories on?
No, my question was, asking about the mechanism. My
I
question
know
was.
your question. I'm just asking how many stories on such companies do you do? Let's do a front page exposing. This Women's Day. This company has no woman, but it also has no female toilet, as though we don't exist on this planet.
Story where?
No, I'm saying that can we do that? Because in a democracy, while we have the right to question our government, because we elect that government, can we now start turning the lens on ourselves?
Absolutely.
I haven't said it. Not even looking at now.
I take my case. Now, when we talk about a step toward equitable nation, ma'am, the current Modi government has around 11 women ministers. If I
Go on.
which is the highest in the last 17 years. And 42 women MPs in Lok Sabha out of 303 BJP members. I'm talking about BJP. Do you see the numbers of women candidates by BJP in the upcoming election would go up?
Is a woman only good enough as a politician if she's a member of parliament or cabinet minister? Out of the 3 million women who are voted to office at grassroots across the world, 1.4 million women are Indian women in panchayats. So when the intelligentsia sits and reflects on the global gender gap index, everybody talks about it. I had the privilege of being anointed by the World Economic Forum in 2015 as a young global leader. But my friends at VEF were very upset because I used to push back against the index. And the men at the World Economic Forum said, Smriti, why do you want to keep pushing back at this index? It's scientific. I said, it's not. For 2 reasons. The Global Gender Gap Index does not consider women in the Council of Ministers of Government of India. The Global Gender Gap Index does not consider women who are MPs, women who are MLAs, does not consider women who are ministers in state governments, and does not consider the 1.4 million women who are elected to office in panchayats. Why? Because every English country or Western country does not have such a huge number. So we are to be discounted because we are doing things right in 3 layers of democracy. The second aspect which no other country now has, the State Finance Commission flow of funds is now tied to gender justice. No other country has that. If you consider these 2 points alone from a perspective of political strength of women and equity, because now panchayats, irrespective of whether they are headed by a man or a woman, are to spend a specific amount of their budget on women-related issues, which will also impact children. That has not happened in the history of our country, or for that matter, the history of any other world economy. And the money goes directly from the treasury to that particular panchayat. If you start considering these economic metrics, suddenly you see India's number rise. It's like the global hunger index. Pakistan apparently is doing better than India, but Pakistan has no atta. And here we are sending 80 crore people ration free for the past almost 2.5 years. So even when we look at the templates which supposedly are positioned to judge India, one needs to, I think, reflect on the silos in which they operate and the agencies under whose direction they operate.
All right, ma'am. Thank you so much.
He heaves a sigh of relief. It sounds as though you have, thank God, survived.
No, I survived.
No, I know. I was not talking about me. I'm going to survive.
So, thank you so much for this.
Thank you. If anybody in the audience has any questions, I'm happy to answer. Otherwise, we will bring this torture to an end.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.